Here I am walking up to the pugger Vpm-100. I'm going to show you how to use the main parts of the machine by just tapping on them. These are the control box and the switches that we're going to be using. You can also see that there's a cap on the nozzle, and that cap always stays on to maintain a good seal. This is me lifting up the hopper so you can see inside of it where we're going to be putting the clay. Here's a close-up of the control box. The red button is the stop button, and below that is the start button. Underneath that are two switches. One switch turns the machine from mixing the clay to pugging it. Pugging it is when clay comes out the front. The bottom switch turns the vacuum on and off, but we're going to get to that later. Alright, let's look at how to add clay to the machine. When we load the mixer, the hopper door has to be open. Once it's open, you can throw your clay inside, handfuls at a time. We want to make sure that we add the wettest clay first. The wettest clay can come from the splash pan or any water bowl. You might find it in a big bin like this. I'm adding double handfuls because sometimes the friction removes water, and when you have enough soft clay, you're going to start adding the firmer clay. The firmer clay wants to go in large chunks. These could be slabs, flopped pots, leather hard pieces, or table scraps. You'll see me throwing enough clay in to fill the part of the machine we call the hopper. Once the hopper is full, we will close the handle and we'll start mixing the clay into the machine once again. I pre-cut these pieces. You'll have to cut your own with the wire tool. Your one partner can be cutting with the wire tool while the other one is adding the clay to the machine. Pull the handle down. Remember to make sure that the switch is turned to the right so that the clay is mixing towards the machine. The switch that we're talking about is the third thing down. It should be turned towards the right or to the back of the machine. Now you're going to press the green button right below the red stop button and let it mix for 3 to 5 seconds. You're going to press stop and then you're going to add more clay. Lift the handle up, lean it against the wall, and keep adding clay until the chamber is nearly full. There's a fast forward in the video now where I'm going to repeat this process because our pug mill, which is called the Vpm-100, has a 250-pound batch capacity. So there's a lot of room for clay, usually more than will be on the black cart. So if you run out of clay in class, go around the classroom with your partner looking for extra clay with the black cart, get some more. You need to fill the machine once. The machine's chamber has to be 100% full past the paddles so that it will mix efficiently. If you don't put enough clay in, it will take much longer to mix the clay, and you'll actually take more time than if you filled the machine full. Now that the machine's almost full, I'm looking at the pile we have, and I need some firmer clay because I think what's in the machine's a little too wet. Using a wire tool, I'm grabbing whatever clay I can off the pile that's a bit firmer. This part can take some muscle, so whoever feels more comfortable doing the physical work should do it. Maybe while one partner is filling the machine, the other can be cutting slabs off the pile or breaking down scraps in the black cart into medium-sized pieces. In this clip I'm doing everything myself, but in class you can divide the task. One person folds, cuts, and preps the clay, the other one feeds it into the hopper. Teamwork makes the dream work. I'm still filling the machine and it's almost full, and you can notice that after I cut the clay off the pile, I'm using my hands to push the clay down, and then I'm leaning my body weight onto the lever to make sure that the machine is fully closed. When I rip and tear this clay by myself, realize that you and your partner can do this together. Careful not to pinch your fingers when you're closing the machine. You might need to readjust this square kind of pushing arm on the handle to line up evenly. Clay in the way and the front and the back can prevent this from happening. Be careful not to pinch your fingers. After a few revolutions, I hit the stop button to check inside the chamber to make sure the clay is mixing well. Sometimes you need to wait and let it mix for a few minutes. Lean on the handle unless you want to close it each time. Now that I'm opening it, you can see that I need to clean a little bit of clay off the seals, but right now I just want to let it mix for a little bit longer. All right, now that it's stopped, I'm going to open this up. And this clay that doesn't look like it fully mixed underneath the clay that is obviously being churned, it looks different than it did before. I'm going to throw that back in and get ready to clean one of the seals. When you're cleaning this seal, you're going to use the scraper that's attached to the wall. Make sure the scraper is somewhat clean, and you're going to scrape alongside this little rubber seal all the way around the edges with the groove and the scraper on either side. You need to clean 100% of this clay off the seal like I'm about to. Make sure that you're using the scraper so that you don't try to scrape on the black rubber seal itself. This is me scraping the seal. Make sure that when you scrape around this black rubber O-ring that you can remove any clay and throw it back in the machine, but you're going to be using this scraper to clean off the top and sides if you want, but always around the black rubber seal. That black O-ring doesn't itself need to be scraped, just the clay that's on either side of it. Once you scrape that, you can scrape the top of the hopper door as well to remove any clay that's stuck there. Any dry clay will need to be wiped on either part with a wet sponge that you'll see in a bucket or that I have here just sitting to the side. You want to wipe both parts to make sure that they're clean if there's any dry clay on them. Then you're going to close the hopper door, and then you're going to close the little C-clamp and hit the start button. Remember at this point that the cap should still be on and it should still be in the mix setting. You want to make sure that the clay is mixing because we're going to let it sit here for a few minutes to mix. Before we walk away for 6 to 7 minutes, we want to make sure that the C-clamp is closed completely after you clean the seals, that the cap is on, and that the ball valve is turned to the right to make sure that it's sealed. It must be this direction when you close it. This is the close position for the ball valve. Before we turn the vacuum on, we have to make sure that this is closed by turning this little black switch towards the machine so it's not in line with a little metal hexagonal opening. When clay is coming out of this machine and the vacuum is on, you won't be able to open the lid until you change this back to the open position to remove any pressure buildup that has occurred. All right, it has been mixing for a few minutes, and I want to tap on the door to make sure that it stays on in case it's vibrated during the mixing process. Now I'm going to hit the red stop button. Remember, that's the top button. And I'm going to open the machine by opening up the C-clamp, pulling open the lid, and you're going to see the clay looks very different at this point, and it will look like there's a little bit more room. We don't need to add any more clay, but you can see the clay is mixed thoroughly. You can run your finger through it to see if it's the right moisture content. I'm just rolling it in my hand to see what the clay feels like. This feels nice and soft. It's actually very, very soft. I would even add some stiffer clay. We could remove clay and add more clay to it. We would want to avoid adding too much wet clay. Sometimes when clay is squirted out onto the seal, I check that. I carefully close the hopper. Sometimes you can get clay on the seal from the door that's built up during the mixing process. So I pull that clay off with my finger, close the door, and now I'm going to be ready to turn on the vacuum. I hit the mix button, push down, lock the C-clamp one more time. While it's mixing, the cap is on. I'm always checking the seals, make sure the cap is on. Then I'm going to make the C-clamp, sure the C-clamp's on. That's the seal. I tap on the door. I make sure the door is closed. The seal is ready, and now I'm ready to switch it to having the vacuum on. I switch the vacuum on while it's mixing still, and the vacuum will turn on, and the pressure should start building up. This is where I might tap on the door. You shouldn't have to do this, and you'll see the pressure build all the way up to about 25. Once it gets there, I can hit the stop button. Then I'm going to switch it to the pug setting. Now that it's on the pug setting, I can hit the start button. I hit the start button, the vacuum pressure's up. I'm going to watch the vacuum pressure. Now, when I watch the vacuum pressure, I make sure that it stays at a relatively high space. It needs to be around 25 psi. It might drop below that. So one partner can be watching it, one can be manning the stop button. If it drops, hit the stop button. Now that the stop button's hit, I can take it and let the vacuum pressure build back up. There was an air bubble between the last batch and this batch, and sometimes that air bubble pops and the pressure drops. If we stop it, we can repressurize the chamber. We're trying to keep the pressure on the clay the whole time it comes out of the machine. Once it gets back up to about 25, then I'm ready to hit the pug button, and from there, the pressure should stay right where it's at. There's the start button, the pressure stays where it's at, and now I can focus on the clay coming out of the nose. I like to put the black cap on top of the lid, and now I'm getting ready to cut the clay. I lift up on the clay a little bit. I'm going to be picking it up. I can get my hand underneath it, and then I'm going to cut it with this attached wire cutter, nice and slow. If there is a piece of wood or anything in there, I want to stop it slowly so I don't cut it off too much. I then cut all the logs just like this. I have a few more logs coming out. So you'll notice as the log comes out, you should get about 16 total from a full batch. This is the last log. It takes a while. I open the valve up and the very last log comes out. You'll know it's the last log when it slows down. You'll see how I cut it again. I put my hand underneath the log. This time I'll hit the stop button. I'm going to very slowly cut down with the cutter. And there is my last log. I lift the cutter back up. Any scrap clay that's on the nose I take off. I replace the cap. Switch it back to the mix position for the next person. Because I released the pressure, I can lift up. And now I could start all over again. You'll see not all the clay is out. If we let it go for a long time, it'll get much more of the clay, but that's not important. 16 logs is good enough, maybe 18. Now we're going to talk about how we bag the clay. You want to make sure that the first pack that goes over the clay, you wrap it over like a wet sock would get pulled off your foot, or how you put a sock on your foot when your foot is wet. You got to kind of roll it on. The second bag always has a Clay Planet logo, and you can just pull that on quickly. Make sure that the second bag is always a Clay Planet bag. All right, so here's how you bag the clay. I take my first bag, and I put my hands in it, and I put the toe of it in there, and I roll it over the clay. You can't just pull it straight in or drop the logs in the bag. It won't work. They're too wet on the outside. I then close the bag by folding it over, and then the opposite direction, I put the Clay Planet bag over it so that the wrapped end of the clay is in the bottom of the Clay Planet bag. I pull up the Clay Planet bag over the other bag. They could both be Clay Planet bags, but one of them on the outside has to be. I spin the bag, and then I want to make sure that I put the opening of the Clay Planet bag against the wall, spun shut. You'll see these ones were done wrong. This one wasn't spun. Make sure you spin the bag and then fold over the opening and put it against the wall. If you put it away like this, it'll last for a long time. You can see this one, I spin it, twist the bag, fold it over, and push it against the wall tightly. That keeps all the moisture in the bag. Do the same thing with the next bag, and we just bag up all the clay. Now, I would have to bag all this clay up too, but the clay chest is empty. So I'm pushing from the second or third clay log. I go over this little threshold at an angle, push it and pull it with your partner. Don't try to do it by yourself. Put the clay inside the box. Avoid the clay hinge when you're putting the clay in. It'll get dirty and ruin that log. And load the clay in. When you load it in, be careful. You want to grab one log at a time. You want to fill it in without tossing it too hard. set it down, don't throw it. You'll see when you fill it, it'll be pretty full. You can rip it or cut it on the cutter to fit the pieces in. I'm able to rip it without putting my fingerprints in it, make as little fingerprints or none as possible, cut it with the cutter that's behind the clay chest and cut smaller pieces and put them in the machine. Pass them to your partner, but you want to fill the clay chest as full as you can. If your load doesn't fit, you'll bag up the clay. Okay, avoid putting it in the clay hinge. You'll have to bag it up if not. If you use the cart, take it back and put it back next to the pug mill. Once you put the cart back, you're all set and you're good to go.